This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to follow the link in the description will receive a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Stick around to the end to learn more. British pop at the turn of the century was in a state. Spice Girls had been and gone, the All Saints was still on top, but for the most part, the focus was on personalities being used to sell the songs, rather than the actual music. There was an over-reliance on covers and trying to cash in on what was popular, compared to the slinky American R&B of Destiny's Child, TLC and Aaliyah, or the Max Martin-backed confections of Britney Spears, NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. Britain's crop sounded undeniably cheesy, but in 2002, a producer appeared with a thing for synergizing classic synth pop with 90s R&B, and he, along with a teen girl group on the edge of collapse, revitalized British pop with his ice-cool underground sounds. This is New British Canon, and this is the story of Sugababes Freak Like Me. It all started with Richard X. The Northern English producer started his musical career in the late 90s. He had grown up loving the likes of Kraftwerk, The Human League and Gary Newman, exciting, interesting artists who were playing around with synths to see what they could do. But by the late 90s, he was becoming disillusioned by electronic music. At the same time, a subsection of the international dance scene was moving away from the prevalent house, techno, big beat and IDM styles to create something that was much more in keeping with the late 70s, early 80s synth pop scene.
Sucking on my titties like you wanted me, calling me all the time that blondie chick.
Called Electroclash, it was brash, tongue-in-cheek, and most importantly, a DIY movement. X was inspired by this to create his own music, a vision of potential future pop, which brought his adolescent loves up to date for a new generation. Alongside other home studio artists like the Freelance Hellraiser and Conway, X, in the guise of Girls on Top, started creating bootleg mashups.
No, I don't want no scrub. The scrub is the guy that can't get no love from me.
The idea of smashing two songs together to make a different track was not new. The KLF, under the name of the Time Lords, had even got a UK #1 with a collision of Gary Glitter and the Doctor Who theme back in 1988. But released in January 2001, X's I Wanna Dance With Numbers, a canny mix of Kraftwerk and Whitney Houston, signaled a new era. It was year zero as far as what I was doing. I'd had that Whitney Houston a cappella for 10 years. I bought it in a charity shop, and I was always annoying my DJ friends by trying to mix it over anything. What made it work was putting it out as a record. It was probably the best thing I've ever done, the best sleeve I've ever made, and it's been downhill from there. This new breed of bastard pop artist would often take a chart pop hits vocal and place it on top of a more credible, maybe Pitchfork approved backing track. This resulted in the Strokes mingling with Christina Aguilera, or The Hives with TLC. The tracks perfected with appropriately punny titles. Pressed onto white labels, these compositions would become underground dance hits, getting increasingly popular through Electroclash-themed club nights and through file-sharing sites like Napster. This movement seemed like it could be the future of pop music. Problem was that these pop music reconstructions were extremely illegal, created without artist or label approval, and there was no way they could be released commercially in this form without risking a lawsuit. But that didn't mean that record labels wouldn't try. Virgin signed me up because of I Wanna Dance with Numbers. They thought they could clear that. And the classic feedback I heard was Kraftwerk thought it was the worst record they'd ever heard. But in the best sleeve, I was happy with that, but I'm not sure if Virgin were. But by the spring of 2002, one of X's other pieces, named We Don't Give a Damn About Our Friends, would find its way into the UK charts in a way more legitimate form.
This one's dedicated to all you Gucci bag carriers out there. It's called You Got Good Taste.
Sugababes were formed in 1998, while founding members Mutia Buena, Keisha Buchanan and Siobhan Donaghy were still at school. They were chart pop, but with a side of R&B, instantly seen as a British attempt at TLC, or a 21st Century Supremes. By the time most of the group had turned 16, their debut single, Overload, had reached the top 10 of the UK chart. They differentiated themselves from the other post-Spice Girls British girl groups by their multicultural lineup and the fact that they co-wrote the majority of their material. When we first started, I just thought you wrote your own stuff. We assumed everyone did, and it became a big deal. Oh, they write their own stuff? Their first album, One Touch, was produced by Cameron McVeigh of All Saints fame and reached number 26 on the album chart. But their label, London Recordings, had expected more from the trio, and they were promptly dropped. Then, midway through an interview during their Japanese tour, Donaghy excused herself to go use the bathroom and never returned. She cited that her exit from the band was due to bullying from the rest of the band. Without a label and a full roster, the Sugababes were in a bad spot. Their careers potentially ended by the age of 17, but they recruited former Atomic Kitten member Heidi Range and managed to get another deal, this time with Island, a partner of Virgin. Needing to make their comeback, Richard X re-entered the picture. In August 2001, Girls on Top followed up I Wanna Dance with Numbers with the double A-side of Warm Bitch, Missy Elliott fighting for attention over The Normals' Warm Leatherette. And We Don't Give a Damn About Our Friends. The latter was a creative mix of the icy robotic instrumental from Tubeway Army's Our Friends Electric and Adina Howard's warm R&B vocals from her 1995 single, Freak Like Me. And Virgin thought it could be a hit. The A&R people had heard one of my records, and for some reason they thought, wow, that could be great. And I was very keen to do it, as long as it remained what it was. It was raw, it was against the grain, and it was still pop music. While Gary Newman was happy to get a writing credit and royalty for the use of Our Friends Electric, Adina Howard did not approve the union. The label though reckoned they could still release it if they could get another artist to cover Freak Like Me and just retain the Newman sample. That artist would be the Sugababes. Despite initial hesitance from the group as they'd never heard anything else Richard X had produced, the four of them set about recording the vocals in X's home studio. When we made the Sugababes thing, there was a loop, some hand claps, the Sugababes, and a semi-broken synthesizer. You could probably forget about the synth, and as long as you had the Sugababes around your house, you could recreate that record. To complement the synth aesthetic, the song starts with an insert coin sound effect from the arcade staple Frogger. X also recut the samples from his original mix, pumped the bass and drums, and gave the robotic Our Friends Electric some actual soul and groove. As well as a traditional chorus, which it had always lacked, instead of the rap middleweight that is present on Adina Howard's version. X forms the It's All Good For Me section. driving through the main sample as the girls ad-lib on top. And it sounds immense. Despite having been born an average of 5 years after Tubeway Army hit number 1, the Sugababes were the perfect vessel for this mutant pop creation, the sweetness of their harmonies deflecting the R-rated nature of the lyrics. The video confirming that they aren't sexual freaks like Howard, but in fact, vampires. On top of it all, Buena unleashes one of the great British pop vocals, with a huskiness that calls to mind a 21st century Dusty Springfield. Sugababes' version of Freak Like Me was released as a single in April 2002. The British public had had their first mainstream brush with commercially viable mashups in February, when Kylie Minogue performed a New Order rejigged version of her smash hit Can't Get You Out of My Head at the Brit Awards. The public had a thirst for this new audio clash, and Freak Like Me went straight to number 1 in the UK charts. And immediately Richard X was hyped as a confirmed hitmaker, with a vision of what British pop could strive for. It was my idea for what pop could be at the time. There wasn't much pop that sounded like it then, or certainly had my sort of ideas woven into it. Yes, retro influenced, but I was more keen to explore the sounds of those modern records, keep some of the electronic rawness, while making use of all the recent technology that was available, computer effect plugins and the like. Amidst the release of Freak Like Me, Sugababes attained the honorary role of Best British Girl Group, which had become vacant after All Saints broke up in 2001. With that single, Sugababes had managed a rare thing: universal appeal. First time round, it was mostly adults who were into us. Now it's better because we're playing to kids and teenagers too. Little kids are probably our favourite crowd. We reckon it's time that age group got to hear some good music. Critically, the single was being praised in all quarters as well. In addition to collecting accolades at the pop-friendly Brit and Smash Hits Awards, Sugababes also managed to win Best Single at the rock-facing Q Awards, when up against Oasis and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But despite what was a dream team pairing, Richard X wouldn't be there to help the Sugababes follow up this success. X continued on with his bastard pop concoctions. In 2003, he released his debut album, Richard X Presents His X Factor Volume 1, a collaboration with various artists, including Khalees, Jarvis Cocker, and indie's pop star of choice, Annie. Its lead single was Being Nobody, the Human League's Being Boiled, cohabiting with Shaka Khan's Ain't Nobody, and featured vocals from pop idol runner-ups Liberty X, and it made it to number 3 in the UK charts. But his criminal pop past made the process an uphill battle. My reputation hasn't helped. A certain major label won't let me use any samples I ask them to. We just got a report back from them saying, due to Richard's earlier work, of which we are well aware, we will not be assisting him with any future projects. It hasn't gone unnoticed. I thought I'd been safely absorbed and assimilated, but obviously not. These roadblocks would mean X would have to change tact. By this time, the mashup moment had faded, but his ideas about genre fusions for the sake of pop music were still revelatory. His first hit production that hadn't lifted from another song wholesale was with former S Club member Rachel Stevens on Some Girls. It was a grungy, glitchy, glam electro stomp and reached number 2 in July 2004. It was actually written with Girls Aloud in mind. Then my publisher suggested Rachel. It's about the way the music business treats people. Some of the lines were based on little anecdotes we'd heard.
This
We are trying to tell a story. It's not like Rachel wasn't in on the joke. Though he since worked with Annie, the Pet Shop Boys and Will Young, Some Girls would be the last time Richard X would chart that high. As much as he had a spectacular ear for pop, he never truly felt comfortable with the mantle of superstar producer. But the songwriters for Sugar Babe's follow-up single had already taken X's ideas and run with them. In August 2002, Sugar Babes followed up Freak Like Me with Round Round. Produced by the pop team Xenomania, it continued in innovation stakes, an almost industrial swing with a killer hook and non-consequential lyrics. If you listen to Round Round, it doesn't make any sense, because we all wrote different bits, and we were all writing about different subjects. It again got to number 1, and again, critics loved it. In doing so, Sugar Babes had securely left behind their shaky beginnings to become a regular chart fixture for the rest of the decade. But the real story was Xenomania, a chart pop production house masterminded by Brian Higgins and Miranda Cooper. They employed the same template of Freak Like Me to thrilling effect, creating hit records that utilized multi-genre collisions, sweet pop hooks, and targeted cool rather than sugary or cheesy as their dominant adjective. What we stand for is everything about the interesting side of music, but with tunes the postman will whistle. The name Xenomania is the exact opposite of xenophobia. It means a love of everything, of all cultures. Round Round was them showing what they could do, and it led them to being the minds behind Naughty's pop behemoth, Girls Aloud. Composed of Cheryl Tweedy, Nadine Coyle, Sarah Harding, Nicola Roberts and Kimberly Walsh, Girls Aloud had won British talent show Pop Idol's The Rivals. Given the history of reality show pop, there was no need for their debut single to be more than a fluttery ballad or a cheesy cover, perhaps both. Instead, in December 2002, with Xenomania's help, they unleashed Sound of the Underground onto the world. A thrilling cocktail of surf guitar, drum and bass, and punk pop attitude that was not only oh so cool, but along with Freak Like Me, signaled that British pop could be way better than bare minimum. We were just desperate to make up-tempo, dance-friendly records. It was about risk-taking, about being unpredictable sonically, but still being catchy as hell. I feel people are much more up for taking risks sonically, which is fantastic. Xenomania will continue making stellar pop with Sugar Babes and Girls Aloud for the rest of the decade, as well as ushering in more high-minded confections from the Saturdays, Mini Viva and Little Mix. The production fingerprints of Richard X and Xenomania can be heard in the genre fusions of Robin, LaRue, Charlie XCX, and most recently on Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia album. And Rina Sawayama's Sawayama. Even Lady Gaga's synth-powered dance pop is a reworking of Richard X's Human League fetish. This era also pushed the rockist music press to take chart pop somewhat seriously, in a movement called Poptimism. As such, Freak Like Me was ranked number 48 on Pitchfork's 2000 to 2004 tracks list, with Sound of the Underground and Round Round making number 39 and 97 respectively on NME's End of Decade songs list, while Richard X was hesitant to take his role in the future of British pop. He made it so that for the first time since his 80s synth-pop heroes, Britain had pop music that could outdo the American variety, catchier, hookier, more cool and way more experimental. And he did it by making Gary Newman, of all things, soulful. Surprisingly, even the man himself prefers Freak Like Me to Our Friends Electric.
But I honestly, I'm not just saying it because they went to number 1, but I really do think their vocal was brilliant. And I do think it's better than mine.
But as they say, it's all good for me. Do you feel like you're running out of ideas? Feel like every time you attempt something new, it's like hitting a brick wall, and you just can't find a way to get over it? Well then, Skillshare may be the service for you. Skillshare is an online learning community for anyone who wants to learn something new, where millions have come together to take their next step in their creative journey. This month I watched Mindful Growth and The Creative Journey. Find your spark and map your future. In it, Mimi Chow leads you through the process to choose a new path and succeed in it. But maybe you want to transcend through your drinking habits. With April Watch Tell's Intro to Mixology, up your cocktail game in 30 minutes. That is also an option. Today is that perfect time to do that thing you always wanted to do. The first 1,000 people who follow the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. After your trial ends, Skillshare costs as little as $10 per month for unlimited learning. So click that link, acquire a new skill, and become a better you. Thanks for watching. See, I told you it was something completely different. What's your favourite British pop song of the 2000s? Comment down below and like, subscribe, and hit that bell. I'd also like to give a big shout out to all that support me on Patreon. Thanks, you're all awesome. See you in 2 weeks.